Hello, and welcome to the Millennial Mastermind Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Mulvey. If you're a millennial looking for actionable advice and a proven formula on how to build the life of your dreams, then this is the show for you. Each week, I'll be connecting with inspiring guests who will be sharing their wisdom on how to reach success. So if you're ready to take your life to the next level, buckle up and enjoy the ride. Yo, welcome to the Millennial Mastermind Podcast, folks. Glad to have you here today. And today is going to be a fun conversation because we're talking to author, entrepreneur, and renowned millennial expert, Javier Montes. Javier's new book, Millennial Workforce: Cracking the Code to Generation Y in Your Company, uncovers how organizations can successfully attract, manage, and retain millennials. In today's episode, we discuss how us millennials can close the generational communication gap and thrive in today's business economy. It's a really fun conversation, and we cover a wide variety of topics. So as I say, buckle up and please enjoy this conversation with Javier Montes. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Millennial Mastermind Podcast. Thank you for stopping by today, and I promise this will be time well invested as we have a great guest for you all. Please welcome to the show, Javier Montes. Javier, how are you today?
Fantastic, Brad. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me. Really appreciate the opportunity and can't wait to reach out to your audience and share some knowledge and hopefully bring some valuable information to your group of listeners. So thank you for being here.
Yes, I love it. So just to kick things off, would you mind giving a brief overview of your background, kind of how you became a quote-unquote millennial expert, and where kind of what that journey looked like for you to get to where you are today?
All right, definitely. Yeah, I'll try to keep it short. So
I know that's not always an easy thing to do.
No, not at all. It's been a long journey. So I would say ever since I was a young kid, I was raised in a very traditional household. So both of my parents immigrated to this country. And as I was growing up, I was raised in a house that had very traditional values that I would say that people say today have been lost in the millennial generation. So I grew up in a household very traditionally. But I grew up at a time during the millennial era when millennials were actually growing up. So I like to call myself an ex-millennial because I'm really part Generation X and part millennial. My experiences, of the world that was around was all millennial because that's the time age that I grew up in and where I was born. But I would say the way I was raised and the way that my mindset was shaped was all Generation X. So I think I have a really unique blend to be able to, I talk Generation X. So most of my friends always growing up were always much older than me. The people who I hung out with were always much older than me. But, I grew up in this world, so I'm a very good person to be a bridge between and help the two generations kind of understand each other. And that's really how and why I decided to kind of go down this path. So as I was growing up, I was raised by my parents, go to school, get good grades, get into a good university, then graduate with a degree, go work for a big company, work your way up the corporate ladder like most of us were taught. But I did that as good as I could until one day I was working at a bank. I got a finance degree from FIU. So, I followed the path as good as best as I knew. And one day, big corporate America, the big bank that I worked for, did something that I really didn't like. I was actually really upset by it. And I sat back in my desk after that meeting, and the only thing I could think of was, I'm too young for this. So I typed up my resignation letter, turned it in. My boss thought I was crazy. She said, how could you do this? You're young and you have such a promising future here with this big company, yada, yada, yada. And I said, well, you know what? I'm gonna try this little DJ thing and see what happens. She's like, you're going to leave a $70,000 job to go be a DJ. And I said, yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I like doing. And I'm just going to, see what happens because corporate America is always going to be here. These banks are always going to be here. So if that doesn't work out, I'll just come back. And she said, you're insane, but fine, go for it. So that's what happened. My first year in quote unquote entrepreneur business, I made a total revenue that year of $4,600. And I almost like blew my mind. I was like, what am I going to do? But a few years later, I really like blew up in terms of popularity, in terms of the way the business was going. And before you know it, a few years later, I was running a $500,000 company. And that was one of the experiences that I said, you know what, I really enjoyed building this from nothing. And it's continued to grow since then. So today we're running a very successful operation, and I've built other businesses aside from this one. And that all throughout doing this, and what my passion has always been in building the businesses, and especially in the entertainment world, I've realized, actually, some of my entrepreneur friends actually pointed out to me that all my teams have been 100% millennials. And I never really paid attention to that. I never thought it was anything until people started asking me, how do you keep your young generation? How do you keep these people working for you so long? And I sat there and I looked and I said, wow, these people have been with me for a long time. And since they've been with me for so long, they're all so kind of young. And when they asked me, what do you do? My friends asked me, what are you doing that they stay with you so long? And my answer to them was, well, I'm not doing anything special. And that was really what kind of triggered to me that maybe I am doing something different. So the more I kind of like dove into it and I entertained these questions of what I'm doing in my business, and I would tell people, and the response was, oh my God, nobody's running their business like this. It's crazy. And then I realized I was onto something. I was really onto something. And this did not come on purpose. And just my experience is 100% what I've worked with my teams, what I've worked with in recruiting, what I've worked with in developing people. And that is how I really, really realized that I am an expert on these millennials, because I've developed a way that was natural to me. It was so innate that I never thought it was anything specific. I never thought it was anything special. And thankfully so, that's how I've journeyed down this path, and where now I'm a professional speaker, and companies are hiring me all the time to come and help the two generations kind of talk to each other, between baby boomers and millennials, between Gen Xers and millennials. And, this is like the new booming generation. And a lot of people don't realize, but millennials are now the biggest demographic in the entire country. There are more millennials than any other generation right now alive. And by, that's a huge number. By 2020, which is just a few short years away, millennials will make up 50% of the entire US workforce. That means half of the people that are out there with jobs, half of the people in our companies, by statistics, are going to be millennials. Half of the people that are coming in to apply for new positions at our companies are going to be millennials. Take that out just a few more years to 2030, that number jumps to 75%. So I often tell companies, if you plan for your company, for your organization, for your small business, for your team, for your club to exist and survive the next decade, we need to learn how to understand, how to really work with, and how to embrace this new millennial generation and the millennial mindset. And that's really where I've evolved and where I'm coming in and saying, here, let me show you what I've done and what's worked. And this is how you can leverage the power of this new, young, energetic, and I would call it badass generation.
I love that. And you recently authored the book, Millennial Workforce, Cracking the Code to Generation Y in your company. So I won't ask you to give all of the knowledge that you shared in that book, because obviously this would be a much longer podcast episode. Yeah. But are there any overarching themes that you would call out that are really that differentiating factor between companies that successfully work with, retain, attract millennials versus those who don't?
If I take it from a very 10,000 foot view and I kind of say this is like a general theme of what I see, I would have to say that the common thread is really getting companies, or having the leaders of the companies, really take a hard look at the mirror and say, are we the best that we can be? Not only in our products, but do we have a great environment for our team? Is this a fun place to work with, right? Or is the company doing what it's been doing for many years and just pointing the finger saying, well, these employees are bad employees, and, the market is bad, and pointing the finger out to outward things and blaming them for the success or the results that we're getting. And I think that if a company really takes a hard look at the mirror and says, hey, what are we doing to become better as a company? What are we doing to become better employees, to become a better team, to create a better culture? If they're taking that and looking that in the mirror and saying, hey, what are we doing? I think those are the companies that are really starting to attract millennials, and millennials want to be at these companies. The ones that don't do that are the ones that millennials are leaving. The millennials are like, they're coming in because they get attracted with like, some just getting a job. And then when they're in there, they're like, this is not all that it's cracked out to be. And they leave to another company. So I think that's the biggest thing, is really becoming better internally. Millennials are just not tolerating the latter.
That makes a lot of sense. And being that many of the listeners of this show, if not all of them, are actually the millennials in that equation, is there anything that we could do from our end to help our companies move along on that path to looking internally at, and understanding how they can make changes that help to retain and attract millennials? Because I imagine could be a huge opportunity for a young person in a company, rather than just leaving when things aren't the way that we would hope they would be, to actually inspire change. So is there anything that you would recommend millennials do to help get things so that they run smoothly between, that generational gap?
Yeah, definitely. Especially if there's any, millennial entrepreneurs there that are starting off, maybe solopreneurs, and just trying to do their thing and following kind of what their purpose or passion might be. That's a huge demographic that I speak to a lot, because I believe firmly that everybody should follow their passion and work on what their purpose in life is. And I found millennials, more than any other generation, is huge on purpose, is huge on fulfilling their passion, and really, not following the money per se, but following the happiness. I found that millennials are big on saying, I want to enjoy life, and I want to enjoy life now. Previous generations were taught, well, save up money and, save up enough so you can retire and then one day be happy. Millennials, they watch their parents go through that so-called path, and only to see that, then some force outside of their parents' control, call it 9/11, call it stock market crash, call it real estate bubble, call it what you want to call it, all of a sudden an outside factor destroys that dream or that path for their parents, and they watch their parents, get their houses foreclosed on, their cars repossessed, their retirement savings go down the drain. And millennials said, whoa, wait a second. That path of so-called like happiness later, all of a sudden was robbed from my parents. I don't want that to happen to me. And if I don't want that to happen to me, therefore, the only thing that I can do is enjoy the path right now. So millennials are big on right now, say, I want to do what makes me happy now. I want to enjoy my life now, which is great. Now, what do we do to amplify that in our businesses, in our companies? Well, the most important thing that we need to do is start focusing on what our company's purpose is. Like, why does our organization exist? What's the purpose that our company actually came to fruition, and what are we trying to change in the world? I think many small businesses, many big organizations as well, they may have an idea on what their purpose is, but they don't tell the world what it is.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. And as you were kind of walking through that scenario of the millennial generation seeing those things happening to the generations ahead of them, whether it's their parents, whether it's people around them, people they work with, aunts, uncles, relatives, whatever, it strikes such a chord with me. I mean, I know I saw something very similar within my own family, and exactly how you said it. I don't want to be in that situation when I'm in my 50s, 60s. I want to be able to enjoy my life along the route, because obviously that is a flawed system if we're seeing it go down the drain like that. And so to circle back to how you mentioned that companies need to be able to express what their mission is, what their purpose is, to attract millennials who that purpose aligns with. I'm just thinking of it because you also made the point regarding millennial solopreneurs, or people who have an entrepreneurial spirit, and that's many of the people who listen to this show. And I'm wondering, people who haven't quite gone out fully on their own yet it's a dream of theirs. Potentially they want to do something on the side to start. How can they take that entrepreneurial spirit and really use that as a driving factor in those companies that they might be still working at this point, to help them extrapolate what that purpose is, help that attract other millennials so they can be a leader in that organization while they're there, to help them thrive there and then thrust them into their own entrepreneurial journey, whether it's a spin-off of that experience or whether that's just a way for them to become financially enabled to be able to chase that dream of theirs.
So yeah, that's great, Brad. I think that where I was finishing off, and you tied it perfectly coming in this direction, right? Leading with your purpose. And I think leading with what you want to change in the world. So I've seen a lot of solopreneurs working at a company like you described and then want to do something on the side. I think it's important to start doing just small things, right? Small steps. But the most important thing that I found is just lead with that purpose, right? So in other words, let's say a solopreneur says, well, I have this dream. I want to have a t-shirt company. I want to print t-shirts, and I want to put, my particular spin on these t-shirts because I think they're going to be cool. It's a great business. I think that the system has taught us to, well, let's look at it from a business point of view and start thinking about, well, who's going to be our target market? What are we doing? And we start thinking about all these things that really starts to distract us from the number one thing that will make from what I've seen, a business successful or not. And that is knowing why you started the business in the first place and being very clear about that. So when somebody's looking to start a business or somebody wants to get this, it's really important to ask yourself why. Like, why this business? Why do I want to do this? What is there missing in the marketplace that I'm going to fill? What is something that exists in the world today that I don't agree with, that really upsets me, that I want to change? And that's the reason why you're starting this business. I mean, it's not just to be an entrepreneur, because if that's the case, then you just maybe go, I don't know, be a plumber or, be a toilet cleaner or something. But you have that fire inside you to do whatever that particular business is, because there's something about that business that you're very passionate about. There's something about that business that's tied into your purpose as a person, as a human being, that you want to fulfill throughout your lifetime. And I challenge every entrepreneur to figure out what that purpose is. If you can hone in on that, then no matter what business you're starting, you can lead with that. So for example, my personal purpose is I want to help people to follow their passion without being sucked into the system. Right? That's really what I'm here for. Help people, inspire them, motivate them, give them the tools, help people who really want to go and live their passion, help them to move to the next level and not let them get sucked in by the system that will demotivate them. Life will happen to them, whether it be financial struggles, family struggles. There's 1,000 other things that will distract them and let them go back into that system of going to get a job somewhere and, try to work their way up the corporate ladder. So that's in everything I do, right? So right now, as I wrote the book, I didn't set out to be an author. I mean, yeah, it sells on Amazon or you can get it on Audible or whatnot. But my leading is not because I want to sell 1 million copies. I don't lead with that. We'll say, hey, buy this book because it's going to change your life and yada, yada. I lead it because it's important that I tell everyone, I do it because I want to help other people out. I want to help people who are considering being an entrepreneur, who have failed at entrepreneurship and got sucked back into the system. That's the reason why I want to do it. When I lead with that, then I connect with people on a different level. Then people will come and are drawn to me. And I think that's the key. So much we're trained to go hire people based on what's on their resume. I don't hire anybody based on their resume. In fact, I don't even look at their resume until 2 or 3 steps down the hiring process. I want to know that they understand, believe, and live by the same kind of purpose that I live by. If they are aligned with that, that is what helps, number one, attracts top quality people to my company. And number 2, retains them long term, because it's not about the money. It's not about whatever's on their resume. It's about what we're trying to change in the world. And everything else in business becomes so much simpler because we just get it. Like, they just believe, they're passionate about what we're doing, and they want to continue to move it forward. And if something doesn't make sense in moving that objective, that purpose forward, then we're not going in that direction. And I think that is the number one thing that I think that they should start focusing on is, number one, find your purpose. And number two is start taking small action. Anything at all. So if it's a t-shirt business that you want to start, well, what's the very first thing that you need to do? Whatever that small little step may be, it doesn't matter how minuscule, is to start walking down the path. You have to go through every single little step. Maybe it might be buying a domain. Maybe it might be setting up the website. Maybe it might be taking some photography or developing your first shirt, maybe sketching your first shirt. Just start moving. It's so easy and it's so cost effective right now to start a business. I mean, you can just literally for a few dollars, you can get a domain name. I mean, it's so easy to get online and get an online presence. Businesses like, for less than $100, you can start a business, which is crazy. But that allows you to start and just keep doing. I tell everybody on my team, my staff knows this very, very well, like the back of my head. They almost can predict when I'm going to say it because I say it so often, is we are focused on getting 1% better every day. If we can get 1% better as a company, 1% better as a human being, if we can get 1% better every single day, by the end of 1 year, we will be so much better. I mean, people don't understand how much better it'd be. Brad, how much better do you think we will be if I get 1% better by the end of the year? How much better am I going to be? Take a guess.
For argument's sake, let's go 365% better.
Yeah, that's the average answer I get, which is fine, right? And that's the first logical answer. But the answer is so far from the correct answer. It's so far from the correct answer. And even if that was the answer, if we did 1% better and the answer was 365%, that would be, in percentage-wise, that means we're 3.65% better than when we started, right? 3 times as good, right? But that's not the right answer. It's not the right answer because of the compound effect, right? Because if today you have $100 and you get 1%, that means you're going to, at the end of the day, you have 101. Tomorrow, you're going to get 1% of 101, not 1% of 100. So it starts to compound if you're getting 1% better every single day. The correct answer is you will actually, if you started off today and you got 1% better, by the end of 1 year, you will be 3,778% better.
Wow.
Which means it's not 3 times better than when you started. It's 38 times better than when you started, which is ridiculous growth. So something so small as 1%, and I asked this to all my team. I asked this to everybody that I talk to, right? And I'll challenge you as well, Brad. Is it possible that, today, whatever it is that you're doing, right? We're working on this podcast. Is it possible that you can do something today that will make your podcast 1% better by tomorrow? Is that possible?
It absolutely is possible.
Is it realistic?
It is realistic.
Okay.
There are just small things. I use a brief example. I can make a few adjustments with the way that I post-process this conversation that you and I are having that will make the audio almost unnoticeably better to some people, but it would absolutely be a 1% increase in the quality of the podcast and the quality of the outcome that I'm posting for the audience to listen to.
Exactly. And for all of us, even individually, we can all get easily 1% better. Now, if I asked you and I said, Brad, can you make your podcast 38 times better this year? Your quick answer would be like, well, I mean, that's a lot. Like your first thing is, well, let's just talk about, our audience. I don't know. I have 10,000 people that listen now. 38 times that'd be what, 3 million people? I mean, that's kind of hard in 1 year, right? But if we look at it the other way, just small 1% increments, it's very realistic and very doable. And that's what I mean about getting started. Just start off with something very small and just take action every single day, 1% better, 1% better, 1% better. By the end of 1 year, and it's just 1 year of your life, which is nothing right now, you can have a full-fledged business operating and you can possibly create enough income that can replace your current income from that passion project, that little business, that whatever you want to call it right now, that little idea you have, that little seed in your head, just by taking 1% action every single day. So my key is one small step every day. Don't worry about, well, by the end of the year, I need to make, $50,000 or $100,000. Don't worry about that. Just tell me, what can you do today? I want to be 1% better today. 1% better. Anything at all. You can add one line of text on your website. You can add a new picture on your website. You can, do one more post on your social media. It doesn't matter what it is. Just get 1% better. And by the end of the year, you're going to have a 38 times return and 38 times better than when you started today. So that's the biggest key that I think that I can share with everybody, that's the things that they should be doing, and those are the things that they can start off with and not get overwhelmed by the entirety, but just start with the very, very small, very, very small. I often stay in my team, and we have this in a frame in our wall, right? How do you eat an elephant? Well, Brad, there's only one way to eat an elephant, and that's one bite at a time. And that kind of summarizes everything, right? So if the task is eat an elephant, and you tell somebody, hey, I'm going to give you $1 million if you eat this elephant, 95% of people will look at it and be like, I can't do it in no possible way, and walk away. But I didn't say that you had to eat it now. I didn't say you had to eat it in 3 months. I just said you have to eat the elephant. Most people won't bother taking the first bite. And that is the key.
I love it. And I think that your message resonates so well with myself and with the audience, and really just the overarching theme of this show, between your call to action to just take one action step a day, just do one thing and let those building blocks stack up, because it's hard to visualize it when you're just looking at the top of the mountain. It's hard to visualize that path, but you just need to make small increases and eventually you'll get there. So I love that piece. And then the other thing that I want to call attention to is a few key words that you threw out there, that go hand in hand. And it's why and because. There's an episode that I did, episode 38, that listeners could go back and listen to, that is my why for this show. And when you understand what that is, that's what gives you that motivation to push through those hard times. There's going to be stuff that you don't necessarily want to do on certain days, even though you're following your passion. There's always going to be hard days. But if you remember your why and you can fall back on that, that's what's going to carry you through those. And I think the word because comes in there and comes into play because when you explain to anybody what you're doing, I could sit here and say, to any new person I meet, my name's Brad Mulvey, and I host a show called the Millennial Mastermind Podcast. Sure, that's interesting enough. There may be a follow-up question they have. But if I say, my name's Brad Mulvey, I host the Millennial Mastermind Podcast because it's my mission to help people around me and my generation create unbelievable relationships with each other that are ultimately going to create extraordinary results in the future and have massive positive impacts in the world in times ahead. That's a much different saying. So
completely different.
I appreciate what you shared there.
Completely different. And again, the call to action is different, right? If you lead with that, even if you don't even say you have a podcast, you just say, I help people in my generation, to have a massive impact on the world. Somebody who cares, somebody who connects with that, they're going to ask you, wow, that sounds really nice. I mean, how do you do that? That's the very next question. The people who don't care, you're at a networking event, you're meeting people, are going to be like, okay, great, here's my card, whatever, call me if you ever need anything. So they just don't get it. Their message didn't resonate with them. And you filter through so many people like that. Mm-hmm. Whereas if they ask, oh, wow, that sounds really interesting. How do you do that? Now your next question is, well, I have a podcast show and that blah, XYZ, blah, 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 blah. Now you can get into it, but it's only with the right people who actually care to listen to what you're talking about. And that's how you filter through the people who will understand and believe in what you believe. And that's so key. So much we're conditioned, again, going back to my thing, we're conditioned to just go with skill set. So many companies are just focused on skill set. And it's not about the skill set. I can teach people to do most of the stuff in my company. I can teach you to do almost anything in my company, actually, right? But I cannot teach you to believe in what I believe in. I cannot teach you to be passionate about what I'm passionate about. It's impossible for me to teach you those things. So if we're just finding people who can do the things, but they don't believe in what you believe in, of course you're going to have high turnover. Of course. There's going to come a time where they'll be like, you know what, this is not worth the money. It's kind of like stupid. We're just wasting our time. But if you lead with the other way, if you lead with the purpose, then you get people who are passionate about what you believe in, who will work extra hours, who will come in early, who will go above and beyond, treat your clients how you would be treating your clients because they are just so passionate about what you're doing. And I think that's the biggest problem that I see with most companies right now is they're leading with skill set. They're leading with, every company leads with, especially on their marketing message, oh, we're the best in this and we're the best in that. Yeah, everybody says that. It's on everybody's website. Who cares? You think you're the best. But tell me why you exist. Customers get that. Customers, this is like the perfect example of even Apple, right? People buy Apple products because they believe what Apple believes, right? They're passionate about, oh my God, Apple comes out with this. Their products are not necessarily better than their competitors' products, but you talk to any of their customers and they'll tell you by far it's 1,000 times better. But if you really look at the specs, it's not really 1,000 times better. But they're just huge fans. They're loyal fans. Any Apple person, you talk to them, you ask them about their phone, or somehow the conversation comes up, they're automatically trying to convince you why you need to buy Apple. A Microsoft customer, they like their products. They're cool. They're happy. They won't get Apple. That's fine. But they're not going to convince you. They're not going to try to pressure you in Microsoft. They're like, yeah, I like it. I'm happy. It's good. It solves me. That's fine. But Apple people are just fanatics. Mm-hmm. And it's because Apple is one of those companies that leads with why. They want to change the status quo. That's the reason why they exist. So people buy their products not because it's the best product, but because, they want to change the status quo. I want to change the status quo too. So they go and they just feel a connection with that company. And those are, just some small examples. And there's a lot of books out there that talks about this is not a new concept. It's just that this generation, our generation right now, is not tolerating the things that previous generations were conditioned to tolerate, right? Our generation is saying, well, you know what? I want to be happy in my work. And if I'm not happy in my work, I'll quit. Previous generations were terrified to quit because previous generations were conditioned that they needed this quote unquote security, life security, job security, family security, financial security. So they were terrified to quit. Millennials say, no, you know what? It's not about the security. It's about happiness. So take your job. I'll go look for another one. And if I don't have one for a while, that's okay too. Right? Millennials just are not tolerating that. So previous generations are just blown. They're like, wow, you really just quit. You have no security going anywhere. Millennials are like, well, I don't really, it's not about the security. It's about being happy. And I'm not going to stay here if I'm not going to be happy. I'll find somewhere else. And if I don't have anything right now, well, when I get someplace that I'm happy, then I'll stay there. And there's so much talent in our generation. There's so much talent in our generational pool right now that these millennials the best of the best are going to go to the places where they're going to be happy. And as small businesses right now, we have a huge, huge upper hand because we can make changes quick. Big corporate America to install, to have change on their company culture, it will take them years to evolve because they're such big conglomerates. As small business, we can make an awesome culture almost overnight. We can literally change the culture in our company very, very, very quickly. And that is what's going to attract the millennials, the culture in your company. That's what's going to keep the best of the best, the top talent in our generation. There's great talent here. They're just looking for a good home. And I think that's what I've developed in my companies is we just have a great culture. Our core values are on point. Our company culture is on point, and it attracts people who think like us and are passionate about the things that we're passionate about. And it just leads to synergy. Not one person has ever quit in my company. Not one single person, which is crazy. Crazy statistic. And I never really thought about it because it was never a thing. People always like, oh my God, people quit. I never had that problem as I was growing my business. I never had that issue where people quitting. I was like, okay, well, what's the problem? Retention. People stay. I don't have that problem. I never was able to relate to their problems until somebody pointed out, they're like, why don't your people quit? I was like, I have no idea. So I went and I asked them, why don't you quit? Now, I don't want you to quit. I'm just saying, why do you stay here? Like everybody else is quitting their jobs. Why do you stay here? And the resounding answer was, because I love being here. This is fun and I get paid to be here. I mean, I get paid to have fun here. I just love what we do. And I was able to tie it all back to they believe in what we believe. They're passionate in what we're passionate. Their purpose is in line with our company's purpose.
So Javier, with that, for those people who are listening who have either already started a business or going to be very soon, how do they get that company culture established in the beginning? How do they let potential hires know what they're all about to attract them in before they have to go hunt for all the great talent that is out there? Like you said, there's amazing talent within our own generation here. How do we project that out there so that we're actually attracting the right people when, we might not have a large business right now, a fancy website or things like that? How can we kind of project that out there into the rest of the folks who we want to come join us?
So the first thing I would recommend, number one, is you got to do some effort on your side and figure out what your purpose is. Become very clear on why you think that your organization or why you started the company or why your company exists. Get clarity on that. Once you know it, you need to start putting it everywhere. So put it on your website, put it on your business cards. Like, it should be attached almost as your company slogan. This is why we do what we do. And start promoting it everywhere. Now, the next thing I'm going to say is if you do have, or you have one employee, or you're considering hiring your first employee, or you have 20 or 30 or 50 employees, people say, right, this word culture, I think, is a little bit vague for most people. And I need to just clarify that. I ask people, hey, do you have a company culture? And a lot of times the answer is no. And I have to go back and say, you understand that every company has a culture. The only question is your culture by design or by default? Because right now, your organization, your club, your sports team, your church, every single group of people has a culture. So your company, as small as it may be, it could be just you. It could be you and one other person. It could be you and your wife, you and your girlfriend, that you started this company together. You have a culture. Now, what's the quickest way? I think one of my mentors told me this and always stuck with me. Your culture is defined by what you reward and what you tolerate. The two quickest, easiest, simplest things that you want to ask yourself about your culture. It's not about having cool couches or a nap room. That's like a small little visual representation of your culture. But your culture, the way that it's okay, the way that it's rewarded to act in your company, that is the definition of your culture. So, for example, most companies, may have a culture where, people walk in or stroll in 5 minutes late. Everybody walks in late. If the leader tolerates that, that is part of the culture. The culture is that we can show up late, and there's no problem with that. On the converse side, if you have a company culture where tardiness is not tolerated, the first time you show up late, you may maybe get a reprimand, a write-up, or maybe even fired. Right? So that's what you're tolerating. Now, what do you reward? Right? So what kind of things in your company, when do you recognize somebody? When do you feel like they deserve a bonus or a raise? Or when do they get big kudos? When do you recognize them? That all contributes to your culture, because then your team will start doing more of that. That becomes your culture. So again, I go back and I challenge most of these entrepreneurs to look at their business, especially look at their team. And going back and tying this all back together, you need to take a hard look at the mirror and saying, have I tolerated this? Am I rewarding this kind of behavior from my team? And I remember it was July 9, 2012. I remember very clearly. It was a Monday morning right after our Independence Day was celebrated. And I walked into my office and I remember it so clear. I walked in, my head looking at the floor. And I just made my way in between my employees' desks, and I went all the way down to back to my office. I didn't want to make eye contact with one single person. Just kept staring at the floor, pretending like I was on the phone talking, and just went straight to my desk and put my stuff down. Didn't say hi to anybody, didn't do anything. And what was going on that day was I realized I don't like any of the people that I work with. I hated coming into the office. It was almost like I preferred not to walk into the office. The production from my team was low. They were always complaining about something. Something was wrong in their lives. They were a victim of something. All that. I didn't even want to make eye contact just because I didn't want anybody to start a conversation with me. And the worst part was I personally hired every single one of those people. Every single one. And that day was the day that I said enough is enough. And I sat down. I sat down with my coach, and I said, "Listen, I don't want to be at my office. This is ridiculous." And he said to me, "That is because the culture that you've created, the culture that's been allowed and tolerated in your company, has been of low production, has been of negativity, has been of people complaining about what's going on in their lives. You've tolerated that, and maybe you've even rewarded some of that. Therefore, you have a culture. You just did not design it. It just kind of happened. So go back and start changing it." And I said, "Well, how do I change it?" Well, the first thing you need to start doing is you need to start hiring based on mindset, not skill set. What are your company core values? I said, "I don't have core values." He said, "Oh, well, we got to start there." So as a small business, what are our company core values? Well, as a small business, especially for most of small businesses that have like 10 or fewer employees, whatever your personal core values are as a person, they're almost identical to your business's core values. Figure out what are the most important things to you. Now, when I ask this to people most of the time, they say, "Oh, integrity and honesty and, things like that." And I say, no. Hold on. Let's really digest into this, right? See, for me, I believe people should naturally be honest. I think people should that's a given. So that is not necessarily a core value. I want to know, what is it about you that makes you you? And what are the things that you just will not tolerate? I said, well, I started naming off a couple of things. He goes, "Okay, let's put it like this. For your culture to be successful, for your culture to be by design as you want, these core values need to be 100% non-negotiable items." What that means is that you will hire people based on these core values, and you will fire people based on these core values. Meaning, a core value, if violated at any point, needs to be immediate grounds for termination. Now, I go back and let's talk about honesty. So when you say honesty, that means people need to be honest. That means if somebody on your team tells a white lie, are you willing to fire them? If the answer is, well, maybe, if the answer is not a definite yes, that is not a core value for you. So you need to figure out what are the things that people will get fired for in your company. And those are the things that you live your life by. It's just natural to you, right? Those are the things that it's just part of your being. If you don't like negativity and you just can't tolerate that, then that needs to be one of your core values. And when the moment somebody's being negative at any point, you sit them down and say, "It was nice working with you, but we can't tolerate having that here." And that's how you start creating your culture. That's how you start enforcing your culture. And the number one thing any business leader needs to be doing, any business owner, any entrepreneur, is being the police, the watchdog, the caretaker of the company culture, the enforcer. That's what the real leader needs to be doing, is saying, this is our culture. And the moment somebody violates that, we need to take action on that right away, because otherwise your culture, again, whatever you tolerate becomes part of your culture. So,
wow, yeah, that's a crazy paradigm shift from kind of the traditional way that many people would think of it as, okay, encourage positivity, but having that mindset shift of it will not be tolerated. And if people are not respectful of that, then they're gone. That totally makes you shift the way you're thinking about it. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, again, if you're willing to tolerate it, then it's not really one of your core values. It's not one of you, that's the thing. In our company, we have 6 core values. I will tell you, every single person on my team, from day one, the first time we interview you, we've gone through our core values at least 4 times when we're sitting down for an interview. And we're telling you, we will fire you at any point if you violate any of these core values. There's no second chance. There's no 3 strikes, you're out. None of that kind of stuff. So we're very, very, very serious about this. This is something that, we live by, and that's how you keep your company culture. That's how you weed out the people who say they're all about your core values, but then don't live by your core values. You can't tolerate people to come to your company that aren't a good culture fit. That will just be a bad apple. And like we know, bad apples ruin the whole bunch. We also know, there are A players, there are B players, and there are C players. There are also A companies, B companies, and C companies. Now, what's important about that is that A players in B companies typically look like C players. So some of the people on your team who may be A players may be in a B company, and they currently look to you like a C player. But if your company made some shifts, your company arranged itself and became an A-type company, they would probably be an A-type company. And vice versa, if you are an A-type company, your competitor might be letting go of a real A player that they just, they can't keep because the company culture just sucks in that other company, and you can scoop up that talent. But you need to be crystal clear on your core values. You need to be crystal clear on your purpose to be able to attract that person into your company and identify, wow, they're a great culture fit.
Absolutely. Javier, I think that is a perfect place to wrap it up, because I think we really hammered home how we can create that culture that is going to create a business that we walk down the halls and we're not avoiding eye contact with everybody.
Yes.
An actual business that we love. And I think that is such an important message. So I'm glad that you covered that today. So if people are listening to this and they're absolutely picking up what you're throwing down, where can they learn more about you or connect with you?
They can just visit my website. It's www.meetjavier.com. So like if you want to meet me in person, basically, so www.meetjavier.com. All of my social media handles are at meetjavier. So you can just find me anywhere, Facebook, Instagram, any of those things. Hit me up. I usually respond personally to all of my emails. So if you email me through my website or on social media, I will love to meet you. I'd love to chat with you. If you're having some personal struggles, I'd love to connect with anybody who's listening to this that would really, need some help, at least shine some light. I'm very accessible, but yeah, just feel free to reach out. If you're interested in more of the content on millennials, definitely you can pick up my book. It's available on Amazon. It's also on Audible if you prefer the audio version of it. You can definitely check it out. There's a free chapter of my book on my website. Just, obviously just give me your email address and I'll send you over a free chapter of the book so you can learn a little bit more, just overview. And nothing. I'm pretty accessible. I mean, you'll catch me talking in your city at some point, probably for some organization or some association. But if you haven't and, we don't have that, you can check out the dates on my website, see where I'm going to be, and just, find me, reach out to me. I'd love to help you out, especially if you're trying to follow your passion. I'm the guy for you.
I love it. We'll definitely have all of those resources linked up in the show notes, and anybody who's listening can find those at millennialmm.com/podcast. Javier, I just want to take a moment to thank you for your time today. You shared some incredible wisdom with us, and this is going to be a valuable episode to anybody who's currently in an organization or anybody who's starting an organization of their own. So I appreciate the information that you shared with us and hope to keep in contact with you and hope we can do this again sometime in the near future.
Of course, Brad, just reach out to me. I'll be making myself available for you.